So let us have a look at the first page, the symbol dawn. I have to warn you that this first half of the first canto, the first 6 pages, up to the first 185 lines, are perhaps the most difficult in the whole poem to understand. But we will do our best. Corinne, would you read?
It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine haven, the huge foreboding vine of time, alone in her endless temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence march.
Thank you. So there's something unusual about this first line. Anybody has anything to ask about this first line?
Yeah, obviously past tense and present tense mixed together.
Which mixes yes. So the question is, why does it say awake instead of awoke? My own beloved teacher, Amal Kiran, has written very beautifully on this first page of the poem. And he points out that the imagery which is here is about the way the gods wake up every morning in India. The hour before the gods awake is the hour between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, the priests open the temple doors, they make loud noises, and they start the puja. They wake the gods up. So when he says it like this, it was the hour before the gods awake, he's telling us that it's 3 o'clock in the morning on a particular day in time. And what follows is a temple imagery. The divine event is the dawn that's going to come, but there's something obstructing the arrival of that dawn. It's the night, the huge, foreboding mind of night, a night of darkness, foreboding of fear and dread. The night is dreading the coming of the dawn and wants to prevent it coming. Night is personified, a goddess, night. So there she is, lying across, as if across the threshold of the temple, alone in her unlit temple of eternity. It's a state of timelessness. Time hasn't started yet. The gods have not woken up yet. Everything, the whole universe is dark, this unlit temple. And there she's lying, stretched, immobile, unmoving, on the very edge of silence. On silence marge, there's a kind of threshold there. Will you read? Would you like to read?
Almost one third.
Opaque.
And triple. In the symbol of the iris muse, the abstraction of the unbodied infinite.
Just read the next line.
A fathomless zero occupies occupied the world.
Yes. So there she is. She's opaque. Something that's opaque, you can't see through it. And this darkness is impenetrable. You can't pass through it. This eyeless muse, this blind state of concentration or trance that she is in, is a somber symbol, a dark symbol. And Sri Aurobindo says that in that darkness, one could almost feel the abysm, the huge, deep darkness of the unbodied infinite, the formless infinite, the infinite without any shape or form, unbodied. And because of that darkness, a fathomless zero occupied the world. The whole human world, maybe the whole universe, is as if contained in or held in a zero, a nothingness. But that nothingness is so deep that it can't be measured. A fathom is the measurement that seamen use to measure how deep the sea is. So we use that word fathomless in a psychological sense to mean something that can't be measured or grasped or understood. The fathomless deeps of the abysm. The abyss is the deepest part of the sea. Nowadays, of course, they can measure it, but sailors in ships who measured their fathoms with a rope on which knots were tied at a certain distance, a fathom, and then they would tie a heavy something, a piece of lead or a stone on the bottom and drop it into the sea and find out how many fathoms it was to the bottom. So there's this emptiness and darkness, deep darkness is occupying the whole world. Mila, would you read?
A power of whole and boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant nought.
Yes. So this night is a power, a force, a power of self. It's a being. But this is self that seems to have fallen from its divine state. It's boundless. There's no limit to it. It is infinite. It is awake. It's awake before the first and between the first and the last nothingness. So that nothingness is the asat that surrounds the universe. So this power of night is here in the universe, in our universe. It's between the first nothingness, when before the universe comes into existence, and the last nothingness, when the universe goes out of existence. That power is conscious and it remembers this tenebrous womb, this womb of shadows and darkness that it has been born from. And it wants to go back there. It doesn't want to be born. It doesn't want to wake up. It's like us sometimes when we wake up in the morning and we think, oh, I would love to go back to sleep. I don't want to face the day ahead. No. That's what it's doing. It's turning away from this insoluble mystery of birth. Why does one have to be born? Why do we have to live? Why do we have to face the day, all the effort and the struggle? No? The tardy process of mortality, of going through a whole life and then dying finally. All that takes so long and seems to be leading nowhere. Why wake up at all? So that power longed to reach its end in vacant naught. It wants to sink back and become empty nothingness. Narendra.
As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, longing forever the unseen will, cradle the cosmic, that drowse of ignorant force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl.
That's it. There's the full stop. It's a difficult sentence. Let's look at it. It's as if this is a dark beginning of all things, the dark beginning of the universe, of the whole creation. No? It isn't, but it's like that. It's as like a dark beginning of all things. This night, this foreboding mind of night and this power of fallen, boundless self, they are like a dark beginning of all things. They are like a mute person cannot speak, cannot express themselves. A mute, featureless semblance. There are no features, there are no identifying qualities or appearances. This is a semblance. It's something that seems like the unknown with a capital U. The unknown reality. That semblance, it's silent, it's featureless, but it just goes on repeating forever the unconscious act, this action of returning and returning and returning. It goes on forever, prolonging this will which has set this whole cycle into movement, prolonging forever the unseeing will. That will seems to be blind, not to know what it wants. No? That mute, featureless semblance of the unknown is cradling, holding in its arms, as a mother holds her child, the drowse of the universe, the cosmic drowse of ignorant force. We are told that this universe that we live in is all energy, actually, force. And this is, or seems to be, unconscious force, ignorant force. So all this universe of ignorant force is being held in the arms of this darkness. But this ignorant force, which is drowsing, which is not in a conscious state, it's asleep, it's slumber, it's sleep, lights up the suns. It gives rise to all the stars in the universe. Somehow, although it is dark and although it's asleep, it gives rise to light. And it's because once there's light, then once there are stars, the rest of the universe comes into existence. So our lives too are carried in this whirl, this repetitive, circling movement of somebody who's asleep, really. A somnambulist is somebody who moves about and does things in their sleep. So the universe seems to be like that. It's a state of cosmic drowse, but it's kindling the suns and carrying the lives of all of us along with it. I think we will stop there for today. This is the darkness before the dawn. In English we have a proverb, no? That the darkest hour comes before the dawn. So Sri Aurobindo is starting his poem in the darkness before the dawn, on a particular day, the day when Shraddhavan must die. And the whole story takes place on this one day. And then it ends at the night of the same day, when we find this foreboding mind of night completely transformed. I'm going to read it to you, the last sentence of the poem. Then, while they skirted yet the southward verge, lost in the halo of her musing brows, night, splendid with the moon dreaming in heaven, in silver peace possessed her luminous reign. She brooded through her stillness on a thought, deep guarded by her mystic folds of light, and in her bosom nursed a greater dawn. This transformation of night is the result of what Savitri does, what Savitri's victory in the course of this poem. So,
creating slumber.
A creative slumber. She's in her sleep, she's dreaming, and those dreams are everything we see around us. It's creative. The force is creative, even when she's asleep, even when she seems to be completely unconscious or just a somnambulist. She's constantly creating. I'd ask you to try and catch the rhythm, the beautiful rhythm that is here, the music of these lines. I used to have great difficulty with the first line, to get the rhythm of the first line, until I realized that one has to make a short break after the word hour. It was the hour before the gods awake. And in almost every line, there's one or two or occasionally three little breaks like that. They have a technical name in poetry. It's called a caesura. It's just a little pause, imperceptible. We have to keep the flow of the sense going, but this little pause, if we can find where that comes in each line, then we can get the rhythm right. And the rhythm is important because this is mantric poetry. And what is important about mantra is the correct pronunciation and the correct rhythm. That gives the understanding of the meaning, and eventually it brings you into a state where you receive the experience which lies at the origin of the mantra.
It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched, immobile, upon silence marge. Almost one felt, opaque, impenetrable, in the sombre symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world. A power of fallen, boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, prolonging forever the unseeing will, cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl.